because
there's a lot to that.
It's very, since it's a sequel, there's like spoiler related, and we're going to try to not go into spoilers as much as possible.
And Gilgamesh says we can't give spoilers.
So that's what he says, of course.
But yeah, with me today is good friends Clinton Bradley and Timothy Wall, and then we have the lovely Saber over here is Lainey Henderson. Yes, for all you Doctor Who fans. But yeah, we are here to talk to you about the franchise, basically. And the first subject I will be talking about would probably be the what Type Moon is and that they basically make visual novels, which is basically the whole basis of the Fate franchise.
Go ahead and explain what a visual novel is.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, basically, what a visual novel essentially is sort of like it's basically like an interactive book where you're reading text you're playing through the perspective of the main character, and it's basically like an RPG where you make dialogue choices. It's like one of those story-driven games where you make dialogue choices depending on that will affect the outcome of certain events. It's kind of like an RPG in that sense, but go ahead.
I was going to say, to give another older, probably a little closer example, is the old Choose Your Own Adventure books.
Right, exactly.
Good old Goosebumps.
And that's essentially what a visual novel is. It's basically a video game that is just an interactive book where you choose your own story, essentially. And so the first one they did was called Tsukihime, and it was pretty popular in Japan. It didn't get localized right away. It doesn't have a whole lot of fan base here in America. And so the next one they did was called Fate Stay Night in 2004. And that's the one we're mainly going to be talking about because that one got really popular in Japan and sold tons of copies and became one of the most popular visual novels of the year it was released. Let's see. But because it's such an obscure franchise, we're going to be condescending and think that probably most of you don't know what the series is about. So we're going to go through the story premise and all the stuff that that entails as well. How many of you here have no idea what Fate Stay Night or the Fate franchise is? Raise your hand. Wow, that's more than we thought. Okay, well you guys are in for a treat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So,
oh yeah!
So if you want to, let's take it away, explain exactly what Fate Stay Night, the story of it, is about.
Okay, long ago in distant Japan.
Keep it short.
Okay, lots of anime-related stuff and explosions, and I think Michael Bay might have something to do with that.
I think
no.
you went a little too short there.
Yeah. Okay, but basically what Fate Stay Night was about was basically 7 magi or masters basically were chosen at random by a thing called the Holy Grail. And they were chosen at complete random. Believe me, it was random. And
Holy Grail chooses them because it sees them where it's
yeah. Basically, you have heroes from all over history, and it could be the future, it could be the past, it could be the present, anything. And basically, all of them basically come to under control of these 7 different magi's, and they get summoned into 7 different classes. And that is Archer, Berserker, Saber, Rider, Lancer, Assassin, and Caster. And basically,
basically D&D classes, essentially.
Yeah.
Or any RPG.
Yeah, it's like he just said, it's basically your average RPG classes. And basically, it's, like I said, legends throughout all of history. So it's not like, you're not, just because, oh, I want to get an archer, you're not guaranteed to get, like, Robin Hood or something.
Yeah, I add something to that real quick. Yeah. So, but because these are magi of the modern world, living in the shadows of society, so basically because the Holy Grail is omnipotent, it's all-powerful, they can do whatever, they basically have to find a way to make this competition fair, and the Holy Grail basically decides that on its own. So it's chosen the masters ahead of time, they're going to fight over it, and basically it's given rules. There's like a church of the Magi that keeps everything under control and monitored to keep it fair, make sure there's rules even, and basically the last man standing gets his one most desired wish granted by the Holy Grail. But because it's omnipotent, it can summon any hero from any point in time and give them all kinds of ridiculous magical powers. So let's see.
Could I add a little bit to that?
Yeah.
As far as the heroes are concerned, one thing about the heroes is it's not necessarily a good person. Anyone who has a big backstory, some famous historical figure, be they good or bad, can be summoned as a hero.
Yeah, any significant impact on history.
Yes.
Yeah, like there's legends from all over the world that get summoned, and some of them are really big, some of them are really minuscule, but obviously the Grail was like, hey, these people are important enough to make servants. And yeah.
Some of these people you can hardly consider to be good guys.
Yeah, they're the obvious ones. The ones that scream, hey, I'm a bad guy.
Yeah.
But I believe the next one will go to our good man Tim.
Yes.
Go ahead, Tim. Knock him out.
Hello, my name is Tim. I'm cosplaying Emi Oshiro from the third route of Fate's Day Night. And I'm going to tell you about the three routes of Fate's Day Night. Okay, basically, in the first route of Fate's Day Night, the protagonist, Emi Oshiro, summons his servant, and her, yes. That's not really spoilers, so yeah. He summons her after getting killed and then resurrected. And he basically teams up with someone and proceeds to beat other servants until, he ends up doing something. I can't talk without thinking of something that would be a spoiler. Yeah, well.
But it does have some really cool legends as far as servants go. Like I said, they are like, if you watch the series, you'll be like, half the time you won't know who it is until the middle of the series.
Talk about the visual novel aspect, playability wise, how playing each route changes. And how you access them in the game itself.
Okay, I see. Basically, you have to beat each route that comes before it. So to play the second route, which is called Unlimited Blade Works, you'd have to beat the first route. So likewise for the third. Basically, I'd like to describe the three routes based on the protagonist, Emi Oshiro's personality. In the first route, he's all about saving everyone, no matter the cost. And in the second route, he's about saving those closest to him, making slight, sacrifices. And in the third route, he's all about saving the one person he cares about the most, sacrificing anything else. That's kind of how I just like describing three routes. And basically, in the first route, Emi Oshiro is pretty much a pansy. No one really likes him in that route. And he shows his Gar moments in the second route, Unlimited Blade Works. Yeah, it's pretty epic. And in the third route, which is what I'm cosplaying from, I get to steal a servant's arm, and he basically gets to, you get to see him fight two servants, and he basically beats them, whereas in the first route, he didn't beat any servants one-on-one. So
Oshiro fails as a magi and is not very strong and can't do anything, essentially. He has one talent, which he sacrifices in the first route.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the nice thing about the concept of Fate's Day Night's story, is that because you can essentially take these 7 characters and then their 7 partners. With these 14 characters, just create different combinations of these pairings, and you have unlimited possibilities for alternate stories, essentially. Of course, you have to add details in there, but it's still, it allows for a lot of creative potential there. Do you want me to go on, or?
Do you want me to talk more about the routes?
If you have anything else to say, yeah, go ahead.
It's full of spoilers. Yeah. Basically, the original visual novel did not have any voice acting, and because of its popularity, they came out with a PlayStation 2 version called Realta Nua. Yeah, I can't pronounce that. And basically, it had all the full voice casting, minus certain H scenes, because Fate's Day Night was kind of an H game, so yeah.
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 But it does have some really cool legends as far as
But if you watch it for the H games, you're watching it for a reason, because the story in this series is pretty fantastic.
Oh, one more thing to add to that. The original version of the Fate Stay Night visual novel had something that was very necessary to cut out for the Rialto Nua version due to acquiring a larger audience. Needless to say, it's still intended for mature audiences, but the original version of the Fate Stay Night visual novel had hentai scenes in it. These had to be cut out in every version afterwards. So, but anyway,
And they were totally essential to the plot too. God.
Absolutely.
You had to do it, or you just couldn't do anything else.
Yeah,
You're just
like-
not a man if you can't complete that.
Mm-hmm.
The funny thing is, they actually had plot significance.
Yes, they did.
They did. There was a reason for them being
Quite a
here,
bit
but
in this route.
if they're just
Shiro
implied,
got laid
it's okay.
Quite a bit.
So, shall we move on?
Sure.
Okay, so due to the success of the Fate Stay Night visual novel, in 2006 they made an inevitable anime adaptation, which got dubbed somewhere after, I'm not sure the exact date, and it was met with mixed opinions, shall we say. Now, because it's an adaptation, the thing about when you ask somebody who is an anime fan, what do they prefer if it's something that's adaptive from something else, like from a manga or from a visual novel, they're usually going to say, read the manga, it's better, read the manga, it's better, read the manga, it's better, read the manga, it's better. And such is probably the case with Fate Stay Night, when if you ask somebody, if you know about the visual novel, which do you prefer, the visual novel or the anime adaptation, they're going to say we prefer the visual novel. That being said, because Fate Stay Night was brought over to the US and dubbed, most people only had exposure to that. There was a manga for it, but that did not come until afterwards. So the anime was all we had in America for a while, and we didn't know any better. It only took people like us who were really into it to go look at this stuff up and find out that there was a visual novel in the first place. So we didn't know what we were missing out on. And that being said, at least in our opinion, now I've heard tons and tons of different opinions about the anime as a standalone anime, just on its pure entertainment value and how well it's made and animated and all that. And most people agree that it's a decent show. Most people think it's pretty good as your generic like mid-2000s like shonen action anime. It's pretty good. Some people disagree. You're entitled to your own opinion, but most people agree it's pretty good. Most people that disagree with that say that they're talking about it's not adapted well from the visual novel, which we can't blame them for that.
And sometimes people are just a little too picky.
But needless to say, the anime is flawed. It's very flawed, and one of those major flaws comes from how the protagonist is portrayed, because Shiro Amiya reaches, shall we say, Shinji Ikari levels of infamy amongst anime protagonists for being completely incompetent and obnoxious and reoccurringly doing stupid things over and over again. So,
like jumping in front of bullets kind of deal.
And I would like to say that the Amiya Shiro that's in the anime is from the first root of Fate Stay Night, basically.
Yeah,
same kind of personality.
So,
I'd like to note that most of the failures of the anime stem from the fact that they tried to lump certain portions from all 3 routes into 24 episodes, and it's like joining a cat and a dog together. You can't have the best of both worlds that way.
I mean, that being said, it was paced decently well, especially towards the ending, because you would think the ending would be rushed really fast, but it was actually paced fairly well. There's only a few aspects here and there that I think were really, really rushed towards the end, but overall I think it was paced very well despite that flaw. The dub also, I'm one of the people that thinks the dub is pretty good as well, but that's just depending on how you feel about dubs in general. I mean, if you're the kind of person who's willing to accept that a dub can be good, then you'll probably like this dub. But most people are going to tell you, in this anime community, they're going to tell you the Japanese version is always better no matter what.
Yeah,
and
plus it's got Jameson Price and Liam O'Brien. I mean, that's a pretty good combo.
Jameson Price can narrate anything.
It narrate my dream.
And so
Nightmares, but still, I can do it.
So we're going to show our first video here. We're going to show the season 2 intro for the Fate Stay Night anime, and it's a creditless version that was ripped off of the DVDs for it. I bought them. One thing I'd like to add to that as well is that there's a shot that's like just Saber in the green background, and what's happening in the background is reflecting what happens in that particular episode at the time. And because that's the first intro for that season made, it's just the 15th episode or whatever. So, but
Most famous line.
yeah, the most famous line of this is my point about the dub is one thing that the dub doesn't have is things that are horribly mistranslated like this. I don't know if you can read that, but it's a line. It's one of Shiro's heroic spiels, and it says it's translated where he's saying people die when they are killed. Yeah, that makes sense, right? You've probably seen that online somewhere.
I was just going to add, there's more to that line, but the fan translation when it was subbed like that, or was that the official? I think
That was I don't remember
I
exactly.
think that was the fan translation, but
Yeah.
it cut the line halfway through because it's supposed to be people die if they are killed. That's the way it's supposed to be. But they cut it at that point, so you've got that fixed.
Right. Context.
Yeah.
Context is very important.
I'm sorry if I'm here about that.
No, you're fine. You're actually participating a lot in this, which is good. Let's see. Yeah. So the anime again didn't get a lot of. It was very. Go ahead.
People complain a lot, like it's more of a harem. Like I hear that complaint a lot about the anime. They kind of like force the harem aspect.
Right. I can see that, but one thing that I kind of had to applaud the series for was not doing the whole predictable like magical girlfriend stereotype with Saber, because Shiro like deliberately refuses for her to cause shenanigans essentially, because like she's like, oh, I want to go to school with you and I want to protect you at school, and he's like, no. So
It's like, stay home, woman.
we're not dealing with that crap. So I do applaud the series for that. They kind of acknowledge that, but I do agree with the whole harem thing, but that's just to keep it to where that's something from the visual novel as well, where it's like Shiro has to be paired with each of these three girls at any given point in time in the story, and so they have to keep it sort of open-ended in the anime. But I do agree with that to a certain extent. But it's just I just kind of have to laugh at it, and
believe me, you will laugh a lot about it.
yeah. Anyway, moving forward, nothing really happened with the franchise between the release of the anime until 2010, when they finally decided they were going to do an anime film adaptation of the Unlimited Blade Works route. Now, I don't know where they got the budget for this thing, but this movie has like a ridiculous animation budget. We'll get to that when we show the next video, but that'll be in a minute. But the thing about adapting Unlimited Blade Works into an even shorter period of time than what they did with a 24-episode long series for the Fate route meant that Unlimited Blade Works was basically 90 minutes of ridiculous over-the-top action. And it was cool for that reason, and it brings to light a lot of plot points from the Fate route you don't get to see. And it's cool for that reason, and I highly recommend you see it. The dub made by Sentai Filmworks was released last summer. You'll probably be able to find a copy of it here at the con somewhere, if you look hard enough. And
yeah, I think we might have a few copies in the village room if we're lucky.
there you go. So
Just look for someone that sells DVDs and they might have a copy of it. So.
But needless to say, the pacing in the Unlimited Blade Works movie is very rushed, because they basically have to go through a story that is as long as, they basically have to retell the story from the anime, but even faster than they did in the anime. So they're taking the Unlimited Blade Works route from the visual novel and just like dicing it up into pieces and just giving you this.
That's understatement, considering like some of the fights almost got written out.
That being said, it is a cool movie, and the animation is absolutely gorgeous. The story for Unlimited Blade Works focuses more on Rin and Archer, and doesn't quite take them out of the action as soon as the original route does. But now we're going to show you a clip comparing, just for the sake of comparing the animation budget and everything and showing off how awesome the animation is. We're going to show you a clip that compares the first fight between Saber and Berserker in the Fate Stay Night anime adaptation, and then comparing that to their first fight in the Unlimited Blade Works adaptation.
Ooh, and
it's ridiculous.
There's a huge difference.
It's ridiculous. So yeah, that's basically to show the ridiculous animation budget for Unlimited Blade Works and how over the top that movie gets. Same fight, but yeah. One more thing I'd like to add to that, you could probably not hear it very well, but the dub cast for the Unlimited Blade Works movie is exactly the same as in the anime adaptation, with one exception, and that is the voice of Saber herself. In the anime adaptation, she was voiced by Kate Higgins, but such is not the case in the Unlimited Blade Works movie. She is voiced by Michelle Ruff, who is here at this very con.
Very con, yeah.
So, very cool.
Everybody should go to her panel and be like, "Hey, we totally attended a panel about you."
Yeah, it's like totally get your
voice
copies.
anyway.
Totally get your copies of Unlimited Blade Works signed, by the way.
Who are they bringing in for the Fate Zero dub?
We'll talk about that later. It was actually revealed a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
and we like freaked out when we saw it. We're like,
Yeah.
it's a great cast. We'll
Our
get into it later.
little forum page just kind of blew up. We're like, "Holy crap! It's got like this guy and this guy and this girl and that girl."
Yeah, we'll get into that later. It's really good though. Let's see, where are we? Actually, we're actually getting into Fate Zero right now. Actually, so the Fate Zero is the prequel series to Fate Stay Night that stars, or well, doesn't star technically. We're getting that. Kiritsugu Emiya, who is Shiro Emiya's adopted father, and it centers around the preceding Holy Grail War before that, and has a whole new cast of masters, a whole new cast of servants with a couple of exceptions. And
might I add, some of the most badass servants.
yeah, as we can see right here in this picture.
I mean, look at that. Tell me you wouldn't want to mess with none of those guys. I mean, they all look dangerous.
Yeah. So, but Fate Zero was made as a light novel, and it didn't really get much attention in the U.S. again, but it was overall received very well. I believe it voiced? I think it was, right?
I think so.
Yeah, the light novel was voiced, but so in 2011 they started on the anime adaptation for Fate Zero, and the first season aired
Last year.
No,
right
the first season aired in from September of 2011 through December, and then season 2 ran last spring in Japan.
If I remember correctly, the first episode was aired of the day of AWA.
Saturday night of AWA while we were there.
We were overly thrilled.
We wanted to watch it so bad, but we were busy having fun.
Actually, what are you talking about? I still watched it.
Yeah.
What?
I couldn't be bothered, I'm sorry. The first episode was 40 minutes long for Fate Zero. It was 40 minutes of nothing but exposition and establishing the setting and the characters, which seemed like a big, long, boring schmeal of nothing, but that's the...
A lot of walking in circles.
Oh yeah.
A lot of walking in circles.
Oh,
but
and playing in
that is
snow.
essentially the change in pace and tone for Fate Zero, because Fate Zero is told in a much different way than Fate Stay Night was.
Much darker.
One of the best things about it is the fact that it does star Kiritsugu, because Kiritsugu is a much stronger protagonist in the sense that he's not, to be fair, he's not really all that well developed, at least not in the anime adaptation. But he's a much stronger character. He's very tactical. He always thinks his plan through before he acts. And you get to see this more subtle, more well thought out aspect of this war where everybody knows each other already. There's no mystery about who the other masters are. He already knows. He's just got to consider all of their powers and abilities and what he's up against before he goes into action, and it's really interesting. And so Fate Zero is not as action-packed as Fate Stay Night, and it doesn't flow quite as fast, but it's a lot better for that reason, because it's just as atmospheric as Fate Stay Night. One of the best things about these shows' animations is that they're very atmospheric, but Fate Zero takes itself a little bit more seriously and a little bit slower, and it puts more faith in the patience of the audience. And the fact that Kiritsugu is not only not wholly incompetent like Shiro is, but he's also a total badass.
Oh yeah. He just
especially in season 2.
People. I mean, this guy, he knows what he's doing. He'd probably put Solid Snake to shame.
However, he's still not as badass as Shiro. You can't 1v1 a servant, what?
I don't know, man. He's got guns.
He didn't.
I mean, you don't really have to be badass if you have a gun.
I have a counter argument to that, but I can't say it because it's a major spoiler.
Yeah.
But
Major spoiler. Bad Archer.
yeah, but the Fate Zero anime, but the best thing about the change in pace and perspective about the Fate Zero anime adaptation is not only is there a better protagonist, but it doesn't necessarily focus on him entirely. The story is told and shown through the perspective of all the masters, and each one of them gets equal attention pretty much, which means that all these characters are well developed, and all these characters are, you care about all of them by the time they and inevitably end up in danger, so it's like, you're much more involved in the story, and it's a very tragic story, and it's very dark.
I say, by the end of it, you're literally being hit with all the feels in the world, and you're like, huh, why? That was my favorite character. Why?
We're gonna go ahead and show the season 2 opening for Fate Zero now.
Hey, CJ, we have a question.
Oh, go ahead.
If someone wants to get into Fate Stay Night and Fate Zero, where would we begin?
Ooh.
Well, we would recommend, us the hardcore fans would recommend you would go Google online, see if you can find like a ROM for the visual novel that is translated, that has a translation patch, but that's not the easiest thing to do, especially if you're like me and you have a Mac and you can't figure out for the life of you how to run the darn thing.
Yeah.
I started out with Fate Zero. He just got me into it like last year, whenever it first came out. And
I'm guilty.
haven't been able to make
I liked it.
Fate
He
Zero
liked
out
it. We
yet,
all liked it.
But Fate Zero, because it's a prequel, I like watching things in order, and that was a great way to get into it.
Yeah, you can't just start out with Fate Zero. It is pretty standalone.
Kind of to follow up on that, having recently watched through Fate Zero, you can just watch Fate Zero through and not have any prior knowledge of Fate Stay Night.
Because it's a prequel.
Yes,
Yeah.
but the catch is that you do miss out on some of the rules of how the Grail Wars work and how some of the way magic works in the setting. But yeah, no, both of them are great. If you are one of those perfectionists who needs to see everything in chronological order, I guess Fate Zero is probably the best way to go. But I would probably agree with these guys. Stay Night's probably the way to go.
My personal recommendation would be do it the way that I did it, which is watch the Fate Stay Night anime adaptation from beginning to end, then watch the Unlimited Blade Works movie, then watch the Fate Zero anime